If you care about boxing, you've seen the debate flood your timeline. Could Gervonta "Tank" Davis beat Jake Paul if they ever share a ring? On paper, it's a spectacle. In reality, it's a referendum on weight classes, ring IQ, and what boxing has become in the era of crossover events and viral build UPS. Today we break down where the fight talk stands, what top voices in the sport are saying, and why the outcome depends less on size and more on how you define a real boxing match. Before we dive in, subscribe and turn on notifications for our in-depth coverage of boxing's biggest stories. And tell us in the comments, if Tank and Jake sign, who wins, and how? The matchup at a glance. Elite pro versus celebrity contender. Strip away the noise and the dynamic looks simple. Gervonta Davis is a top-tier professional fighter, an undefeated southpaw finisher with elite timing, power and ring generalship at lightweight and super featherweight. Jake Paul is a physically imposing cruiserweight who has built a legitimate fanbase, trained seriously, and beaten a mix of older MMA names, former champions from other sports, and one active pro boxer, a split decision loss to Tommy Fury. The question isn't whether Tank is the better boxer. He is. The questions are whether size can trump skill, and whether the format, exhibition or sanctioned bout, glove size, number of rounds, changes everything. Shakur Stevenson. Skill beats size. Tank by decision. Unified lightweight champion Shakur Stevenson doesn't see an upset brewing. In a recent interview, Stevenson dismissed the idea that Jake Paul could land a fight-changing shot on Davis. Size plays a part, he said, but if I'm Tank, I just go out there and outbox him and use my knowledge and IQ. I can see Tank making it real easy. Stevenson predicts a points win rather than a stoppage. That guy's too big. I don't think Tank just knocks him out. I see him outboxing him. Asked whether Paul had any realistic or legitimate path to victory, Stevenson cut it short. No. The logic is familiar to anyone who watched Davis dismantle taller men. Tank has neutralized length before, most memorably against Ryan Garcia. Explosive, fast, 6 feet tall, and against Mario Barrios at 140 pounds. He closes distance behind feints, catches and counters, and manages range as well as anyone in the sport. If he could reach Ryan and Barrios, argue Davis backers, he can reach Jake Paul. Showbiz the adult. Distance, timing, and Tank's aura. YouTuber and analyst Showbiz the adult framed it this way. Boxing is about distance control, timing, and ring IQ. Size is just one variable. He points to Davis's habit of reading movement and setting traps, adding that if Tank could walk down Ryan Garcia, tall, fast, with real boxing craft, Jake will be no different. He also invoked something less tangible and more cultural, Tank's composure in face-offs and pressers. He's not a polished talker, Showbiz said, but his body language conveys the confidence of someone who grew up fighting for keeps. It's a real thing. If you're from where he's from, you know. The scripted talk, and why it matters. Trash talk has taken a meta turn. In recent social exchanges, Davis mocked Paul's role as the paymaster in crossover fights, joking about getting extra and hinting at scripted theatrics. The lines were part taunt, part business needle. They landed because suspicion already exists among purists that influencer bouts sometimes feel more like entertainment than sport. Logan Paul, Jake's brother, has pushed back hard on allegations of rigging, arguing that talk of no knockout clauses and staged fights damages legitimate business. If this company became known for fixed fights when they weren't, he said, we'd have to hold people accountable for that. Call it the fight before the fight. A branding war over whether these events are exhibitions dressed as boxing or actual contests with real consequences. Chris Algieri, star power matters, and both men have it. Former world champion and analyst Chris Algieri took a wider view. He argues that in 2025, being the face of boxing is as much about drawing audiences as it is about resume building. It's not Sugar Ray Leonard anymore, Algieri said. It's who sells, who brings eyes to the sport. In that sense, Davis and Paul both matter. Tank packs arenas and dominates pay-per-view windows. Paul brings in a new, younger audience that might otherwise never watch boxing. The synergy, if they ever fight, would be commercial fireworks. It's unfortunate, Algieri conceded of the trend, but it's the world we live in. Charleston White. Exhibitions aren't legacies. On the other end of the spectrum, social commentator Charleston White dismisses Jake Paul's career as entertainment first, boxing second. His critique is blunt. Paul has not faced prime, top-tier professional boxers. His matchmaking has been designed to generate views, not climb rankings. Until that changes, White says, the gulf in craft will be impossible to ignore against someone like Davis. Boxers of that view recommend a simple correction. If Paul wants legitimacy, he should fight active pros in his weight class, period. Teddy Atlas, the what if that sells a fight. Hall of Fame trainer Teddy Atlas understands how this bout would be marketed if it gets made. He compared it to Floyd Mayweather's exhibition with Logan Paul. Fans were seduced by one question. What if the smaller, elite fighter gets clipped by a much bigger man? That's what will sell it, Atlas said. What if Tank makes him miss and then counters? What if he hits him on the chin? We'll find out if he can dance. Atlas acknowledges that Davis is a real puncher and among the best in the world. But he also recognizes the what if is the fuel for the hype engine, not necessarily a roadmap to victory. The physics argument. Weight classes exist for a reason. Not everyone is convinced Tank steamrolls a man who walks around near 200 pounds. Skeptics point to physics. A 135-pound power puncher moving up against a cruiserweight faces obvious disadvantages in reach, mass, and durability. They cite examples. Mayweather versus McGregor. Floyd, 5 feet 7 inches and around 150 pounds on fight night, hit Conor often and cleanly and never knocked him down.
Why?
Because McGregor routinely absorbed shots from 170 to 180-pound men in MMA. A punch that folds a 135-pound opponent may not stagger a 195-pounder. The expected verdict from that corner is Tank on points, if the fight is real. Too small, goes the refrain. There are weight classes for a reason. The McGregor-Mayweather analogy has limits. Teaching a boxing novice to survive 12 rounds isn't the same as trying to win them, but the underlying principle stands. Size changes outcomes, especially when the lighter fighter can't carry his power up as effectively. Format is everything. Sanctioned bout or exhibition. One critical variable that many fans skip is format. Is this a sanctioned professional fight or an exhibition? What's the glove size? How many rounds? Will there be headgear in sparring-style conditions? Every one of those decisions affects outcomes. Smaller gloves increase the chance of a stoppage. Bigger gloves cushion impact and reduce cut risk. 8 or 10 rounds favor the more experienced technician. Shorter sprints favor an ambush approach. If it's an exhibition with non-standard allowances, veteran observers expect both sides to protect their brands. They're not going to let either guy get seriously hurt, one analyst said. There's too much money at stake in future events. That suspicion is precisely what annoys purists and animates defenders of Jake Paul's business model. Dave Allen, as long as no one gets hurt, fine, but don't insult the sport. British heavyweight Dave Allen, never shy, cut the middle path. He said he didn't like the idea of Paul facing Mike Tyson or an aged Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., calling those publicity stunts. But a Davis exhibition doesn't bother him as long as fans know what they're getting. He labels Paul area title level. Not a bad fighter, but not a world-class one. If both men make money and nobody gets hurt, fine. But I wouldn't pay a penny for it, Allen said. Gervonta is in his prime. Why is he wasting his time? The business case, why it keeps coming up. This fight talk didn't materialize overnight. By multiple accounts, Davis has name-checked Paul more than once in recent years, sometimes as a jab, sometimes as a tease. The online back and forth has intensified, with both sides sharing clips, mocking each other's resumes, and hinting at negotiations. After Davis's last outing ended in a draw, attention shifted back to a likely rematch, but the Paul bout continues to hover, as leverage, as marketing, as a safety valve if other fights stall. From a promoter's perspective, Davis versus Paul is easy to sell and lucrative to stage. From a purist's perspective, that's exactly the problem. The final debate, can Tank hurt Jake? Even among analysts who favor Davis, there's a technical debate about finishing power. Tank's knockouts at 130 and 135 are violent, clean, and often late, as his opponents break down under pressure. But how does that translate when the target is naturally 60 pounds bigger? Some argue Davis would have to go downstairs, bodywork to slow Paul's legs, sap his output, and create openings upstairs later. Others doubt whether even sustained body shots would produce the kind of stoppage fans associate with Tank. He may hurt him to the body, one coach said. But I don't see a one-punch knockout. There's a counter to that, too. Ring IQ can make size irrelevant for crucial moments. Davis's economy means he doesn't need volume to own rounds. If Paul's offense is reduced to single shots at range, Tank can bank rounds while walking him into counters. A lopsided decision for Davis becomes the most plausible professional outcome, assuming the fight is legitimately contested, with standard gloves, timed rounds, and experienced officials. The upside and the risk for boxing. Whether you love or hate Jake Paul's boxing career, he's done one thing undeniably well. He gets people talking. He's bringing a lot of eyes to boxing, one British pundit admitted. Even if you don't like it. That matters in a sport that needs fresh audiences, new sponsors, and a pipeline of future fans. The flip side is the cost. If exhibitions overshadow championship fights, or if world-class boxers divert prime years toward circus attractions, the sport risks undermining the very excellence that makes it special. That tension is why the Davis-Paul conversation won't die. It's micro versus macro. Legacy versus entertainment. Risk versus reward. And it's why you see so many contradictory takes from smart people. There isn't one right answer. There are trade-offs, some obvious, some hidden. What happens next? Talk is cheap. Contracts are not. Davis appears headed toward a rematch after his draw. Paul remains active, hunting opponents who check 3 boxes: commercially appealing, beatable, and plausible as a step up. If they do sign, we'll be watching the fine print: weight limit, glove size, number of rounds, sanctioning. Those details will tell you whether you're watching a boxing match or a show. Your take? Who wins if Gervonta, Tank, Davis, and Jake Paul fight? Does ring IQ and elite timing beat size and reach, or do weight classes prove decisive? Should Tank even entertain it while he's in his prime? And if you're a fan, would you pay to watch, or wait for the highlights? Tell us in the comments. If you found this breakdown useful, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss our next updates on Tank Davis's next move, Jake Paul's matchmaking, and the sanctioned fights that actually define the sport. Boxing is better when we demand both excellence and excitement. Let's hold it to that standard.